Hi, I'm Aldo. Welcome to Plays the Thing, the channel where I share my experiences prepping and playing tabletop role-playing games, and this is the second development log for Heroes Unbound. In the first log, I talked about how I tried merging Supers Revised to Champions Now by adding situations to the Supers chassis. That experiment raised questions about other parts of the system and eventually led me to create an entirely new game. Today I want to talk about aptitudes and resistances in Heroes Unbound, what they are, how they work, and where they come from. Let's start with aptitudes. Aptitudes are the attributes that characters use to perform actions outside of power use. There are 4 of them: might, dexterity, intellect, and presence. Each has a dice pool rating and each caps at 5 dice. Might governs physical strength and force. Dexterity handles speed, agility, and precision. Intellect covers reasoning, logic, and knowledge, and presence represents force of personality, how effectively you assert yourself in social situations. If you're doing something that isn't a superpower, such as lifting a relatively mundane weight, or sneaking, or persuading, or reasoning, you're probably using an aptitude. Resistances also have dice pool ratings, and they also cap at 5 dice, but they work differently. Resistances are what characters use to avoid or withstand harm, and resistances deplete when characters take damage. When all of your resistances hit 0, you're incapacitated, but how you're incapacitated depends on which resistance drops last. If your Fortitude hits 0, you're unconscious. If your Composure bottoms out, you're emotionally shattered and unable to act. The 4 resistances are Fortitude, Reaction, Mind, and Composure. Fortitude is physical resilience. Reaction is how quickly you respond to danger. Mind is cognitive resilience under pressure, and Composure is emotional and psychological resilience. Here's an important rule that shapes the whole system. Any attribute can be used to defend against an attack as long as there is a fictional justification. Likewise, any aptitude or power can be used to act, again, as long as you have a fictional justification. There is one exception, and that is that resistances can never be used to act. They are purely defensive. So where did this structure come from? Well, the foundation is Supers Revised. The game already uses resistances in a similar way, though with different die codes. It also has aptitudes, but they function more like a skill list in that game. So in Supers Revised, you'd have fighting, or vehicle, or occult, or academia, and so on and so on. Everyone in that game starts with at least 1 die in everything, giving every character a slim chance to attempt almost anything that they want. That works really well in Supers, but I wanted to try something different. I've always admired the elegant symmetry of DC Heroes. In that game, you had 9 attributes arranged in 3 categories: physical, mental, and mystical. Each category had 1 stat for action, 1 for force, and 1 for resistance. And conceptually, I've always thought that this was very beautiful. What I never loved about DC Heroes was how wildly the benchmark ranges varied between the attributes, but still, I liked the symmetry, and it got me thinking, could I capture it using Supers concepts? Thinking about it, I quickly realized that middle stat, the force column, didn't make sense in a system where action and force are already combined into a single roll. But maybe I could merge action and force into one column, the aptitude column, and then pair each aptitude with a corresponding resistance. So that's how I got my pairs, right? Might and Fortitude for strength and resilience, Dexterity and Reaction for speed and responsiveness, Intellect and Mind for mental capability, and Presence and Composure for social and emotional force. So unlike DC Heroes, I ended up with 2 physical categories, but they're distinct enough from one another that I think it works really well. And then I have the one mental category and the one mystical category, if you will. This symmetry instantly appealed to me, but I immediately recognized that it created a problem. Since I'd reduced all actions to just 4 aptitudes, characters with high aptitudes could now do anything related to that aptitude regardless of their character concept. Let's consider a character with Intellect 5D. Since all intellectual actions use Intellect by default, that character could attempt anything intellectual at 5D, regardless of what it is. Subatomic physics? Check. Legal theory? Check. History? Check. Philosophy? Etc. Doesn't matter. Check, check, check. That's not specialized enough. Reed Richards shouldn't be equally good at everything just because he's brilliant. So, in pondering this, my mind went to the old Marvel superheroes game, the TSR one. In that system, everything is an ability roll based on your core attributes, but talents improve your effectiveness in specific things. For example, you might have typical reason, but if you have a rank in law, you'd shift up to good reason for legal matters. Add another rank, and you're at excellent. So it's an elegant additive system, but from my experience with supers, I knew that stacking modifiers would throw off the math in Heroes Unbound. So I held on to the inspiration that came to be from Marvel superheroes, but I knew that I needed a different approach. My solution? I decided that characters would need distinctions to attempt things most people need training to do. So, if you want to practice law, or perform brain surgery, or pilot a fighter jet, you need the relevant distinction. Without it, you can still try, but you'll suffer a minor or major hindrance, which is minus 1d or minus 2d to the roll as decided by the game master, and that's a mechanic that's already in the system. If you do have the distinction, you roll your full aptitude with no penalty. But I wanted specialists to be better not just than untrained characters, but potentially better than other trained professionals. That's where I leaned into a mechanic that Russ Boyd had developed for Supers Revised, and that is the double roll. Here's how it works. For each rank you have in a distinction, you get 1 double roll per session. Before you roll, you can declare that you're using one of these double rolls, and then you roll twice and take the better result. It's essentially advantage before D&D popularized the term, and it lets specialists shine in their areas of expertise without breaking the core math. At first, inspired by Marvel superheroes, I called these talents, and then I shifted to calling them specializations, but as the system developed, I realized that they didn't have to be limited to skills or to professions. Drawing inspiration from icons and its aspects, I broadened the idea. You could take detective or fighter pilot, sure, but you could also take incorrigible playboy or fastest woman alive or strongest one there is. You could even take inherent qualities like big, maybe you're always 20 feet tall, which gives you double rolls when stepping on people or resisting being moved. Once I saw that these could represent anything that made a character distinct beyond aptitudes, resistances, and powers, I named them distinctions. So, to recap, Heroes Unbound uses 4 aptitudes for action and 4 paired resistances for defense, and distinctions to express specialization, identity, and fictional permission, all without stacking modifiers or breaking the core math. One last note, all attributes in Heroes Unbound are rated in dice, but those dice are D10s, not the D6s used in Supers Revised. I made that shift partly to give lower die codes a better chance of occasionally punching through higher ones, and so far in playtesting I've really liked how it feels at the table. Next time, I'll talk about powers and how they work in Heroes Unbound. So, if you're interested, don't forget to subscribe, like the video, and click the bell icon to make sure you don't miss it. As always, thank you for watching, and until then, I wish you good health, I wish you good cheer, I wish you good gaming. Goodbye.